A hard-fighting soldier on the battlefield. Lord, I'm a hard-fighting soldier. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a hard-fighting soldier on the battlefield, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. I've got a helmet on my head, and in my hand a sword and shield. I got a helmet on my head, and in my hand a sword and shield. I've got a helmet on my head, in my hand a sword and shield, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. Well, you gotta walk right and talk right and sing right and pray right. Don't you know you gotta walk right and talk right and sing right and pray right? Oh, yeah. Well, you gotta walk right and talk right and sing right and pray right on the battlefield, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. I've got a message of good news for the sinful and the sad. I got a message of good news for the sinful and the sad. I got a message of good news for the sinful and the sad. And I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. You know that Jesus is my captain and he fights my battles too. He has never lost a battle and I know he never will. I got the word for my sword and I got faith for my shield, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on and make me stand. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on and make me stand. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on and make me stand, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. Oh, when I die, let me die in the service of the Lord. Oh, when I die, let me die in the service of the Lord. When I die, let me die in the service of the Lord, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. Lord, I'm a hard-fighting soldier. Don't you know that I'm a hard-fighting soldier? Oh, yeah, well, I'm a hard-fighting soldier on the battlefield, and I'll be bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I hear. How you guys doing tonight? All right. Blue skies and rainbows, indeed. All right. Blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven are all I can see. When my Lord is living in me, I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Green grass and flowers all blooming in springtime are works of the Master. I live for each day. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Tall mountains, green valleys, the beauty surrounds me, all makes me aware of the one who made it all. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. We're going to sing I Couldn't Keep It to Myself, and then we'll have one request, so be thinking. All right. Yeah, so on this one, don't forget to do the roll, too. All right? That's what that is. You can do an actual roll if you can do that safely. If you're a gymnast. Yeah, or a barrel roll. Those are all acceptable. I'm kidding, please don't. We don't have a few of our medical professionals here tonight, so let's be safe. All right. I Said I wasn't gonna talk about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna talk about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. What the Lord has done for me. You ought to have been there when He saved my soul. You ought to have been there when He wrote my name on the road. 'Cause I started walking and I started talking and I started teaching and I started preaching what the Lord has done for me. Well, I said I wasn't gonna sing about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna sing about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. What the Lord has done for me. For me, you ought to have been there when He saved my soul. You ought to have been there. All right, here we go. When He wrote my name on the road. 'Cause I started walking and I started talking and I started teaching and I started preaching what the Lord has done for me. Well, I said I wasn't gonna shout about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. No, I couldn't keep it to myself. Said I wasn't gonna shout about it, but I couldn't keep it to myself. What the Lord has done for me. For me, you ought to have been there when He saved my soul. You ought to have been there when He wrote my name on the road. 'Cause I started walking and I started talking and I started teaching and I started preaching what the Lord has done for me. All right. Hats off to those people who could keep a beat and roll at the same time. Impressive. All right. One request. Saw a hand. Ain't no rock. Ain't no rock. All right. Perfect. Not a guitar song. Everything. Man. Crushed it. All right. Everyone's got to get the hand motions in on this one. Ain't no rock, no tree, no bird. All right. We got that? I like the tree the best. Okay. The tree the best. All right. Ain't no rock. Ain't no rock gonna stand in my place. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. There ain't no rock. Gonna stand in my place. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. There ain't no tree. Gonna lift its branches. I lift my hands, glorify His holy name. There ain't no tree. Gonna lift its branches. I lift my hands to glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Ain't no bird, here we go. Ain't no bird. Gonna sing in my place. I lift my voice, glorify His holy name. There ain't no bird. Gonna sing in my place. I lift my voice, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. There ain't no rock, no tree, no bird gonna stand in my place. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. There ain't no rock, no tree, no bird gonna stand in my place. As long as I'm alive, glorify His holy name. Well, come on and praise His holy name. Lungs and lives glorify His holy name. We'll come out in praise to His holy name. Lungs and lives glorify His holy name. All right, sit down.
I'm out of breath after that. Woo. Okay. All right, so I've got some announcements for you guys. So for teens, we've got a teen retreat coming up on October 4th through 6th. So this is a save the date. So parents, if we could mark off that weekend, more information to follow from Christian and Leslie. That is October 4th through 6th. On this Friday, the 6th, the teens are going to get together at the Bradfords from 7 to 9 for some Devo fun. Just need to bring your teen and a snack to share, and that'll be a good time. Which family group has their video or skit together already? I'm all for Heather and Tav having ours all planned out. I'm dependent on you. So remember, we're going to do skit or video and presenting at the Kickoff Classic. That's September 15th, and that's after church. Mitchell? Right after church? Okay. So after church on the 15th. Just also want to let you know that Rick needs some man muscles after service to move some chairs. So if you could meet Rick in the cafe area after church, need some help moving chairs out to the shed. And so just a reminder about some of the service opportunities we've been talking about for several weeks, but they're coming up. So 2 over the next couple weekends. This Saturday, the 8th, there's an inland recovery group that's meeting at 8 o'clock here at CrossWay, and they're going to head out to the Panhandle area and do some tarp repairs on roofs. Janet Fryman is a contact. She's also looking for any donations. And this is for a group of, school-age children, so clothing, hygiene donations. That can be given to Janet, or you can meet here and bring them over. Great, okay. So if you didn't hear, there's a sign-up sheet in the back with ages and genders and what's needed. So that would be great. And then the other group that's going to be headed out on 9/14 and going to Mariana, it's a group called Sleep in Heavenly Peace, and they're building bunk beds for children in need. So that is the weekend of 9/14. Do we have a meeting place? Here. Okay, 8 o'clock in CrossWay parking lot, Saturday, 9/14. And we're still collecting supplies for Mount Dora's Children's Home. So the procedure is we'll first check the supply list and what's needed. When you bring them in, just make a mark that what you've brought in there on the list in the back, and then put your supplies in the storage area. It's that wooden door. And to the right, we kind of opened a spot up to put our donations. So we'll be collecting that through October 6th. And then also just a reminder, St. Jude Walk is coming up. So Peggy Johnson would like to meet with anyone who's planning on doing that after church. So 5 minutes after church, Peggy will be meeting with everyone, kind of giving them the lowdown. I think that's it. Oh, and one more. I'll just remind you about the church directories. There's new church directories in the back. And if you need a PDF document of that, there is a list. You can put your name on that and your email address. All right, so any birthdays? Oh, man. They were holding out on us. All right. If you could say your name and if you like your age. Lady in white. All right, let's sing happy birthday to Kim and Darlene. Happy Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Kim and Darlene. Happy birthday to you. All right, what about anniversaries? Yay! It's your other half, yeah. Okay. So if we could say names and how many years married?
Louisa and Chris, 24.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so let's sing happy anniversary to Andrew and Becca and Louisa and Chris. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, Andrew and Becca, Chris and Louisa. Happy anniversary to you. All right, we're going to have a break and kids can go to their classes.
To them. They're not grounded or anything.
Go to your room.
Go to your room. All right. So 1 Corinthians 13, love over the weekend. Talked about patience for those of you who are here, patience with regard specifically to other people. Can you turn it down just a little bit? I'm bothering myself already. Usually it takes a minute. I should be patient. Yeah, very well. So we're going to kind of continue this and hopefully got an early start so we can have some time for discussion if it lends itself that way, because tonight's topic kind of goes on patience with other people. So tonight we're going to have, we've talked about this numerous times in the past, but you know it never gets old, is how to deal with difficult people. How to deal with difficult people. The number of books you can find on this, and I don't know why Laura's pointing at Adam with this. You know, I find that, man. Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing. I don't want to start any marital problems. So now when we have this topic, literally, don't take anything I say and like point at your spouse or nod or any elbow bumps or anything. Really, this is, man. It's a loaded topic, because like I said Sunday, here's a truism in life. You can count on a couple things. One is you're going to have to deal with difficult people in life. The other side of that coin is you are a difficult person to more than one person in your life, right? I mean, we got to accept both those facts in order to really grasp reality. So I got to think, you know, what's the Bible have to say about this? We talked a lot about patience. We're going to be in Hebrews 12 tonight, because I think it's a pretty apt verse or set of scriptures to really help us kind of explore our expectation of dealing with difficult people and really how Jesus saw it. So a couple things to remember as we talk tonight is the majority of the world is made up of people that are not you. All right? Right? So, and these people that are not you, they're different than you. Does that make sense? You guys with me so far? Right, yeah. So the majority of the world is people that are not you. These people are different than you, and some of them can be difficult, right? So really, as long as we agree on those things, the foundation is set. If you disagree with me on any of those things, we can have a lively discussion afterwards, because I'm fairly certain most of them are self-explanatory and self-proving. So Hebrews 12 tells us this. We'll read it in just a second. Anyone in here have experience dealing with difficult people? Josh's hand shot almost out of the socket. All right. Yeah, oh, yeah. So I didn't think about this. Your job really is dealing with difficult people. Josh works in an inpatient psychiatric hospital, and I know a lot of you probably feel like you work in an inpatient psychiatric hospital most days, and you may not be far off. It'd be interesting to do a study if we took just a random workplace and swapped them with the people that Josh works with, if there'd be any noticeable difference on a certain day, you know? You never know. But the bottom line is, we all have some experience with this. Who in here feels like, you know what, I really deal with difficult people well? And this isn't a trap. Like, some of us really have a skill with this. Who in here thinks they're good? Austin's raising his hand. You're raising your hand. Depends on the day. Ain't that the truth? Monday is not the day. Yeah, okay. Karma, there we go. Okay. So if you guys could just kind of shout out, what are some of the things that have worked for you in the past? Listening. Shut up and listen. Okay.
Basically, you're meeting people where they're at.
Oh, nice. Okay. Meeting people where they're at.
You just try to meet them where they're at and work with them.
Meet them where they're at. Okay. What else we got? Our special education teacher back here, our special needs teacher. Karma. Yeah. Love them through it. Wow. End of class. We're done right there. Austin deals with the legislature, so really I think out of all the dysfunctional populations we deal with, Austin's is probably the most difficult, man. Talk to them like they're normal. so many political jokes going through my head right now. So many inappropriate political jokes going through my head right now. Got to remember, only speak what's useful for building other people up. There we go. Okay. So anybody else have a wisdom? Really, what you guys have said is awesome, and I think we're going to come back to it. Go ahead.
Don't assume you know their story.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, don't assume you know their story. So find out what they're interested in. Okay, so meet them at their level, kind of same thing. Find out what they're interested in. Don't assume. Okay, lots of great stuff. Laura is married to Brent, so really we've got a couple of people vying for the title of dealing with difficult people. Put yourself in their shoes. There's a famous saying of, before you criticize somebody, walk a mile in their shoes. That way when you do criticize them, you're a mile away and you have their shoes. Yeah. Right? That's not how it goes. All right, one more. Oh, man, I didn't want to go there. Make room for grace and forgiveness. Okay, so here's the thing. I bet you if we went through each and every person in here, we would all, have a nugget of wisdom to share, and I'll be pretty good. 90% of us, right? No, probably 100% of us. We've all dealt with difficult people, and we've all done it to varying degrees of success. So what we're talking about tonight in applying the Bible to this part of our life, like I say, it's not rocket surgery. Like, we know what's going on. We know the steps of this. See, a couple people got that. We're sitting here in our genuinely unemotional state, and we can understand, I need to meet them where they're at. I need to not assume their story. I need to ask them questions. I need to do this. So why is it that this is such a difficult topic, like 99% of the time? Okay, so you got to be in the right mental state. I heard somebody over here. Go ahead, speak. I'm going to look at you awkwardly until you speak. Nobody wants to do it. I agree with that. One more back here. We'll go, actually, two more. One back there, one here. Go ahead.
It's sometimes hard to think when somebody that's difficult has bothered you, so you get kind of emotional response.
Okay, so emotions overwhelm. That's really wise. Not everyone's difficult is the same. There's a variety of difficult. There's a wide variety of difficult. So we're going to read through Hebrews 12 real quick. I wrote down the chapter and I forgot. I know exactly where it is. So here we go. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, in verse 1, chapter 12 of Hebrews, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Okay, couple things that are important, and we're just going to go through, I picked, I think, 3 things out that really stood out in this section of Scripture, but if you're just reading through this, read through it over and over again with the concept of how do I deal with adverse situations, how do I deal with difficult people, and things will just jump out at you as you read it. You think about it, even the concept, this isn't going to be one of the points, but the race marked out for us, stay in our own lane, what's to say about, our mission. We're going to get to this, but one of the things that really jumped out is, and I think this fits with what some of you said about dealing with difficult people, this is a call from the author to do one thing. We're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Anything that hinders or entangles us, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, and let us fix our eyes on Jesus. We use this scripture a lot in terms of repentance. Throw off the sin that entangles. But I think it really fits with this concept that it's throughout the book of Hebrews of fixing our eyes on Jesus. Why is that important? Because you guys hit the nail on the head with this. Typically, dealing with difficult people involves one thing: a difficult person that evokes an emotional response in us. If we didn't have that emotional response, dealing with difficult people would be easy. Put it this way, I deal with difficult people all day long. Professionally, they don't get under my skin 90% of the time, 87% of the time, no. But it's one of those things, because I don't have a relationship with them. I'm not involved in their drama. It's purely professional, and they don't push my buttons. So it's one of those things. I can deal with personality disorders. I can deal with people who are help-resistant complainers. I can deal with arrogant people, and it does nothing to me. I deal with you, and you know what? At the end of 50 minutes, I walk you out the door, I write your note, and I get the next person. You know? And I mean, not to be cold about what I do, but like, that's kind of what it is, you know? But here's the thing. In my personal life, with people I love, care about, and have an emotional investment, that's where I tend to find more difficult interactions. Does that make sense? So it's those people that a difficult interaction can get really emotional real quick. And I think that's a really important, that seems very common sense, but I think that's the root of understanding. And that's the root of this scripture here, is the first thing that happens is our emotions hijack us. And we take our eyes off of Jesus and they go somewhere else. Where do they go? They go on us. You gotta think about the last difficult situation you dealt with that got really emotional, whether you handled it well or not. Were your eyes fixed on Jesus and your mission as a disciple the entire time? Right, mine definitely wasn't. Mine was like, I'm going to fix your little red wagon. Instead, I'm going to fix my eyes on Jesus, right? And it's not a good thing. You know, here's what I've noticed. I deal with relationship disputes every single day, right? I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the work we do. And what I've noticed is this. Most often, disputes occur not over anything substantial. Difficult people, it's rarely involving substantial situations, life or death matters. I would estimate a large percentage of the difficult people we deal with are difficult because of a matter of opinion, a matter of preference, or a matter of that's just the way I like things done, or the people I like to be around with. Does that seem fair? I mean, can you think of the last time, we actually had a conflict today at the office that seemed weird to me because one of my coworkers came up and he's like, man, I just had a really big disagreement with this very senior person in our department. And I'm like, okay, well, man, you know, I'm used to like opinions and but you know, he listed something that was like, man, this was like patient safety. Like this was a legit, and I remember we talked through it and I'm like, something was bugging me about it. In the end, I was like, you know why that stood out? Because that was like a real thing. As opposed to probably most of the stuff we deal with any given day is a matter of opinion and emotion. And you know, I don't think we're exempt from that in the church. Look around the church right now, or just think about the church on any given Sunday. We have people we hang out with, people we're not as close with, and then we have the, like I said Sunday, the people, right? You know, the ones that are a little irritating. I mean, let's just, yeah. Again, no elbowing, no pointing, no nothing, all right? But I think for us to really address this, we can't address this outside the church because it exists inside the church as well. And I think in order us to address how to deal with difficult people, we've got to come to the understanding that, hey, inside the church, outside the church, no matter what, like this is a problem that is a people problem. It's a me problem. It's a relationship problem. And I can't act like it's not happening here and just pretend that it's happening out there. So it's that honesty of the fact that, hey, we're going to have difficult people within the church and outside the church, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with it. And I think also coming to the fact that, you know, we fix our eyes on Jesus because that emotional hijack that happens is very real. And I'll just say this. I don't have good data on this. But I look back at the number of spiritual disputes or the number of relationship mediations that needed to occur, whether it's inside the church or in groups I'm involved with outside the church. And the funny thing is, I could boil it down to really about three different things. People that jump in without all the facts. What causes these kind of disputes and dealing with difficult people? People jumping in without all the facts. Do you guys agree with that? Like a lot of conflict and so-called difficult people and difficult situations is typically a misunderstanding where one party or both parties don't understand everything. And they jump in without all the facts. And I'm like, okay, that's a big portion of it. The other one, and I kind of narrowed this down to disagreements I've seen within the church, a lot of it comes down to opinion versus scripture. And I've seen a lot of people jump into what they'd call, or they'd say, you know, I'm really struggling with this brother, me and Danny, you know, we got to resolve this, we're having an issue, you know, blah, blah, blah. And when you really dig down to it, is there a scriptural basis for it? There might be scriptures used, but a lot of times it boils down to not a selective interpretation, but it boils down to a matter of opinions and a matter of inflamed emotions and hurt pride and bruised egos and a lot of the other stuff. And we start labeling people as difficult or difficult situations or people to be avoided. Does this ever happen to anybody, or am I just speaking absolute Greek? Right? Yeah, it is. Thanks for acknowledging. I mean, it happens. And I think for us to really fix this, for us to be effective disciples, we've got to learn how to deal with quote unquote difficult people. And I think the other thing is, we mentioned this earlier too, is people label somebody as difficult and they jump into these situations or avoid people that are difficult, and not so much based on other stuff, but it's that fact that we haven't learned about the other person. We make assumptions about the other person. We go off half-cocked. Does that ever happen to anybody in here? Right? I've never felt like, I've done this to people before, and I've never felt more like a heel because I've written the story ahead of time about what's going on in my head, and then we finally start working out, and I'm approaching them like they're a difficult person, and I've totally lost my fixation on Jesus, and I'm now fixated on me and righting my perceived wrongs, and then I learn something that's either been going on in their life or something in their history or something that was in that situation that I didn't pay attention to, and now I feel like a heel, right? Horrible feeling, but it happens all the time. We lose our fixation on Jesus. We forget to focus on the mission. Do you realize that our perceptions are not always reality? Anyone disagree with that? Is perception reality? We can debate that for a little bit if you want. You guys have heard that saying, right? Perception is reality. Anyone agree or disagree with it? To me, yeah, that's your problem. Well put. I like that. We had a hand in the back in the audio. You don't think perception is reality. Okay. Okay. So it's a subjective reality.
I think it is subjective, because if you say this is a chair and somebody argues, you can prove this is truth.
Right.
But in matters of opinion and feelings and all those other things, how somebody sees something, how they've experienced it, that's going to be different than somebody else. And
Right.
it's not a black and white issue. It's
Right.
more whole bunch of gray.
Whole bunch of gray. Well put.
Just as he was saying, like you need physical objects for reference, emotional and spiritual needs a solid concept. Like that's why we go to scripture.
Okay, so we're going to get to that. I'm glad you brought that. Now, I will say this. It's funny that you pointed out a chair, because I work with, my office is about 95% women, about 5% men, and I did actually have a disagreement about a chair. Whether a definition. I learned that this thing that I called a small sofa is actually a settee. Yes. So again, yeah, anyone, the guys in here are like, I don't know what that is. Yeah. The women are like, yes, obviously it's a settee, and you were wrong. Yeah. Yeah, okay, one more. Right, right. Absolutely. Right. So subjective reality, what's true for you is not true for me. I'm going to move on just in the interest of time. Oh, okay. He said basically what's true for you is not true for me. And that, how do we deal with that concept of subjective reality in a lot of ways, which is kind of an oxymoron. But here's the thing. Dealing with difficult people, I want us to keep kind of teasing this thread out of it. More often than not, we're not dealing with reality. We're dealing with emotion. We're dealing with opinion. And we're dealing with just general differences in lifestyle and approach to life and how we interact with the world. So I think it's a really important foundational thing for us to realize, like what we label as a difficult person really is more adequately labeled as a different person. They're different than us. Because here's the thing, there are genuinely difficult people. There's psychopaths out there. There's antisocial people out there, sociopaths. It's less than probably 1% of the population. So the odds of us dealing with that on a daily basis, short of living in like Josh's world, is fairly rare. So most of the people that we're labeling as difficult or annoying or irritating or hard to deal with or bad or anything like that, more often than not, we've got to reframe our brain and fix our eyes back on Jesus to the fact that this is a child of God, created in God's image and put on earth just like we were. And the differences between us are less about being a difficult person and more my perception of them. And I think it's important. So anyone ever hear the term of like a cognitive bias? Okay, what's a cognitive bias? There you go. You just raised your hand. You bought into that one. Come on.
I guess in a way it's just a leaning or
It's it's the way our mind leans one way or the other. And here's the bad part is we all think we're very rational. But if you study psychology long enough, you'll realize like the human thought process is quite possibly one of the most irrational processes or collection of processes you could ever imagine. So we have things like confirmation bias. Ever hear of confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is where our brain actively screens out information that goes against our innately held opinion. So if I have an opinion that we'll just pick Tab because he's like a likable guy, that Tab is a jerk, right? That's my opinion. Then no matter what, my brain is we're actually all wired for this. Confirmation bias is something innate to humans. My opinion, that if that's my opinion and my innately held belief based on whatever it is, my brain is actively going to filter in information that confirms that and filter out information that goes against that. Isn't that scary? And here's the thing, you're like, gosh, I pity people that do that. We all do that. That would be a horrible way to live. Yes, it is. Yes, and we all do it. So we've got confirmation bias. Going along with that, hand in hand, is what they consider like a negative bias, which a lot of us really have, actually, is this bias towards seeing the glass as half full. Right now, there are optimists and there anything else, but we tend to see problems more than we see things we're thankful for. And this negative bias is fairly problematic. I would argue that it's getting worse, just in the clinical population that I see on a daily basis, but it's this fact that we actively weed out good information and we absorb bad. If you disagree with me on that, watch CNN or Fox News for about an hour, all right? Either one of those, whatever your political slant is, watch those for a while and check your attitude at the end of it. But it's more of a negative filter. So here's the funny thing. Tallahassee's had how many shootings this year? I think another one just happened. I mean, it's like more shootings and murders happening in Tallahassee. Every time, I don't know if anybody reads the paper, but you ever read the news, there's more shootings, there's more deaths, there's more anything else. As in the U.S., what you guys look at different things on social media, how many shootings and murders are happening every single day in the U.S.? Like, you read more and more, the social commentary is America has a gun problem and America is going to heck in a handbasket, right? The funny thing is that narrative goes to the bigger part of the world as well. And if you look at it, people are like, man, there's more wars, there's more famine, there's more abuse and neglect, there's more human trafficking. You look at it, I'm like, man, you get despondent just reading the news, right? What if I told you there has never been a time worldwide with more peace, more health, more civil rights, more cohesion, and more like global citizenship than the time we live in right now? You guys would be like, you're crazy, Kevin. Look at the data. It's true. We've never lived in a time like this. You've never had a time where there's almost universal human rights. I mean, sure, you have North Korea, but hey, the rest. But no, we've made inroads in every area, and we can focus on the things that are going wrong, and the people that are being oppressed, and things that are being hurt, and the people that are being killed. And I'm not saying any of that's good, but just the fact that if you look at anybody who looks at the objective data, you'll see that this is the most peaceful, prosperous time civilization has ever seen for an extended period of time. And you're like, wow, okay, why don't I believe that? Why do I still think Kevin's not telling me the truth? Because we have a cognitive bias. And I think it's inherent to understand, like, fix my eyes on Jesus, that's great. We got to understand, in a lot of ways, our brain works against us because we've been trained by living in the world. And we've got to understand, you know what? Sometimes what I think and what I feel, and this is blasphemy to a lot of people, and it's blasphemy in modern culture right now, what I think and what I feel may not be right. Yes, it's true. And the funny thing is that's important to learn because we've got to look at what filters we're looking at information through. Because here's the thing. There really aren't a ton of difficult people out there. There's different people different than me. And what makes them difficult is my emotional response and the filter that I put on the world. Not blaming it on me. Justin may be a jerk sometimes. You know what I mean? It may be a Justin problem, but here's the thing. How I deal with it is my perception of events and my perception of Justin and my perception of my role in the world as a son of God and my role as fixing my eyes on Jesus and remembering my mission. Does that make sense? It's a really kind of challenging thing. The affinity bias is the last one I would bring in. Ever hear about this? This one fascinates me. Because you probably have people in your life like this. If you sit back and you look, I have people in my life that they'll be like, oh, man, I love Bobby. Bobby's so awesome. He's like this. Man, this is what I really like about him. He's great. Bobby, right? Bobby Buckets. We've got that. And here's the thing. Bobby has flaws, right? And say Bobby's flaws are, I'm just going to make them up for you. This is in no particular order. But say his flaws are that he's a drunk and a gossip, right? He's not. Right? Not that I know of. I don't think he is. I tried to pick pretty, so that's not, Bobby's a great guy. But say those are his flaws. If I like Bobby, I'm going to like Bobby. Oh, well, he's dealing with that. He's working on it. Now say Matt, I don't like, right? Say I don't like Matt. And Matt has all these good things too, but he's also a drunk and a gossip. The very same things that I will pinpoint and bug me incessantly about Matt. He's drunk and a gossip. Can you believe me? He's drunk and a gossip. I'll overlook in somebody that I like. You ever had this? Where you're like, why do you like that person and not that person when all I see is similarities between those two? There's an affinity bias. There's something where we connect with certain people, and this can go into race, it can go into socioeconomic, it can go into culture. It's fascinating. Our brain plays tricks on us in a lot of ways. And the important thing to remember is we get emotionally hijacked. We take our eyes off Jesus. We lose sight of Jesus' mindset. Look at what he's saying here. It gives us an example. Fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, for who the joy set out before him endured the cross. That's kind of an contradictory statement. Scorning its shame and sat down to the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured opposition from sinful men. I mean, Jesus dealt with this. People aren't perfect. Not a single person in this room is perfect, and it's one of those things. We can perceive them as difficult and lose our focus on Jesus, or we can perceive them as different from us and start meeting where they're at and finding the common ground and taking care of this and taking the blinders off our eyes. Make sense? Any questions or comments so far? No? There you go.
I read a study, I don't know how accurate it is, but it said like more than 80% or something like that of our decisions are made without us really being conscious of them.
Oh, man.
As like our processing. So like if you tell someone you're like, I like this, I want this. Even in advertising, if you put up food stuff by about 10:30, it increases who's going to eat lunch at these particular places.
Isn't it funny?
So it's like we do these things without us knowing, even though I think we assume that we're completely conscious of each
Right.
individual decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it's over time your brain learns that hurts, that felt good, I'm okay with that.
Yes.
And then it's like the original AI, basically, like it's making the decisions for you. So it's really hard when we talk about reacting to something. It truly is our body sitting there and saying, I'm learning enough about the situation I'm in to make it for you so you don't have to feel it. So you
Yeah.
don't have to do it.
Yeah, it really is interesting. Malcolm Gladwell has a good book, Blink, Thinking Without Thinking, Making Decisions. There's a couple of them, but
This goes along with what you were saying earlier about everybody thinking the earth is in its worst state ever, but you're like, no, it's in its best. It's the ease of information.
right.
This information that she's talking about is so easy to get.
Mhm.
The information you're talking about is so easy to get.
Yeah.
You hear about all of this stuff, and you think, wow, this is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's because you hear about the whole
Right. We're spoon-fed so much. What he says basically is the ease that we're fed information without thinking about, without being wise consumers. We just take it as gospel and go. When really you wonder why we're taught to eagerly dig into the scriptures and think and meditate and contemplate on God's laws. The fact that to be purposeful and logical and to be not unemotional but not be mastered by our emotions takes work, takes effort, and we can't just go with low-hanging fruit. So I think that's an important thing to remember is, sorry, go ahead.
What you're talking about, I kind of think about the movie What About Bob?
Yes. What about Bob?
The movie starts off with Bill Murray as Bob, but he's the most annoying person in the world.
Yes, he is.
And you can kind of look at him and how he kind of view, these people with their faults.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have, what's his name? I forget.
The therapist.
The therapist.
Yeah.
And that's how he sees him. But everybody else as the movie goes on is seeing Bob
Mhm.
Eric has continued to see all his faults.
Right.
And as the movie goes on, all he can see is his faults, and everybody else is just starting to look at him.
They love Bob. Yeah. Bob's great.
So as the movie ends, you know, he's going crazy, looking at faults and wondering why he can't see these faults, and everybody's looking at him.
Yes.
And so he's driving himself crazy,
Mhm.
wondering why, you know, nobody can see that.
Hanging on to flawed information. Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, What About Bob? Great movie. Kind of illustrates this. Fantastic movie. And actually really talks a lot about harboring bitterness, which is funny because that's mentioned in Hebrews 12 in just a little bit. We're probably not going to get to it tonight, but I encourage you to read it on. The second thing I wanted to bring up, probably won't get to the third point, is I think it's really important in verse 7. And it builds on exactly what Lindsay was just saying and kind of what we talked about in terms of fixing our eyes on Jesus. In verse 7, so the author lays down this challenge to us. Hey, Jesus was in difficult situations. Jesus dealt with difficult people in hopeless situations and hopeless, sinful, aggressive men who ultimately killed him with a joy set forth in his heart. And then in verse 7, what he says is basically is a restating of the concept here. He says, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as sons. For what son didn't get disciplined by his father? If you're not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are illegitimate children and not true sons. Moreover, we have all had human fathers disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father in our spirit and of our spirits and live? Excuse me. Our fathers disciplined us for a little while, as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produced a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and weak knees, make level paths for your feet, so the lame may not be disabled, but rather healed. And I think in a nutshell, what we're seeing here is, look, you've got to change the way you see your situation. When I'm dealing with somebody difficult, this builds on fixing my eyes on Jesus and then actively changing the way I see this situation. What if we approached every difficult situation with an educational mindset of the fact, what is God teaching me in this situation by allowing me to go through this? You know, what is it? I know this is a difficult situation. What if I change the way I perceive it and I go from what I know? I have the mindset of Jesus. Jesus' mindset was this: mankind has become sinful, and I'm going to go and I'm going to redeem them by sacrificing my life. So we take that focus of Jesus, that mindset of Jesus of, you know what? I am a servant of humanity. I am here for the betterment of everybody, that they can have a relationship with God. So we take that mindset and we come into it and we change the way we see our situation. Instead of getting emotionally riled up, Rusty ticked me off, I can't believe he did that. If I actually step back and take a breath and I understand, okay, this is a difficult situation, and I don't know why Rusty did that, but how do I change? What is God trying to teach me in this situation? Do you see how the dynamic changes right there? Instead of being like, you know what, I need to meet with Rusty, and I've got 10 scriptures right here why he's such a pain in the butt and why he needs to repent. And there's probably more than 10 scriptures that apply, buddy, but, you know, man, I think Laura's got at least 20 scriptures just ready at any given time. But, you know, it goes from this retribution-based Christianity of like, you know what, this is a problem, we've got to fix it, to, you know what, this is a difficult situation, but this is a brother that I love in Christ. And you know what? I don't know what's going on in his life. I don't know what it is. What's God trying to teach me in this situation? You know, how is it that I can change the way I see this? And what that requires, though, you guys can all see this coming, what that requires is not that immediate emotional reaction. And actually, that immediate emotional reaction, can you imagine if Jesus had that? They convict him, and he's like, bump this. You're all dead. Angels, come on. You know? That emotional, and me like, oh, you know, I felt bad. I shouldn't have done that. You know, those of you that still survived, okay, I'll do what I was supposed to do. No, you just had one of those, man, he survived. He took the scorn and the sacrifice and the unjust treatment. I mean, I don't know, maybe some of us in here have been put on trial or convicted wrongly. But I'm like, man, I read these newspaper articles about people who are convicted and they get out of prison after like 40 years. And I'm like, man, how do you make that right? Somebody who was convicted for something they didn't do. And I'm like, man, that's Jesus. He was killed for us. And so if I take that mindset of Jesus and I understand, you know, in this situation, where's my discipline in this? Maybe I didn't do anything wrong, but what is God trying to teach me? And all of a sudden, I can start dealing with that emotion. Here's the funny thing, not to get too like psychological on it, but really what I've learned in working with people in counseling is so often our initial emotional response to difficult people, there's a history somewhere in our life about how we've been wronged, how we've been hurt, how needs haven't been met, how we perceive we've been wrong, about something that's happened in us. We bring our baggage and our filter into it. And that emotional reaction, even though the situation may not be our fault, we're always responsible for our response. And when we start understanding that, the scripture makes a lot more sense, because all of a sudden it's like, you know what? Danny may have done me wrong, but how I handle it shows a lot about my character and shows a lot about my life and my focus and how I respond to things. So really, I know we talked about dealing with difficult people earlier, but it's kind of a myth. There's people. And the difficulty comes in my response to situations. And once I see that and I fix my eyes on Jesus and I don't forget my mission as a disciple, that changes the way I respond. And once I start seeing like, okay, what is God trying to teach me in this situation? What eternal lesson is God trying to teach me? It changes the way I respond. Does that make sense? Can you imagine if we put this into practice in fractured family relationships, in parenting relationships, in relationships at work, in relationships in the body, if we took this mindset of just two simple things? Stop when you feel that emotional response. Fix your eyes on Jesus, remember your mission, and figure out what God's trying to teach you in the circumstance. All of a sudden, there's no difficult people. There's mission-minded Christianity. All of a sudden, we're right back on the track. And you know what? When we have that mindset, we can deal with anything. May not turn out the way we want, but does it make a lot of sense? You kind of see, wow, maybe learning how to deal with difficult people isn't the strategy I need. Maybe it's fixing me and putting my eyes back where they need to be instead of that emotional, vengeful response. That's true patience. Any thoughts? And we're going to wrap up with that.
It stuck out to me what you said about baggage earlier. I think if we can remember some of the good baggage, like Christ did for us,
Yes.
and then we can take that and go, okay, he responded to me in a way that was abnormal, and that caught me off guard. If I can respond, maybe I am the only one who will respond to this, what in my mind is an annoying person. They are used to a specific response to their annoying behavior,
Yep.
probably. If I respond differently, I may be the only one who ever does that.
Yep.
If I can just take a second and think,
Wow.
I just responded too differently. Let me try that for them.
Yeah.
And I also find that if I can turn off the emotional part, like you said, the other person normally has to work through that emotion and they come back around. And their reality was only emotional then, and they'll come back to center.
Yes.
So I can wait it out.
Yeah. So often than not, once cooler heads prevail, it's amazing how much can get worked out. I mean, really, if you took an inventory, you look back at every emotional head-to-head confrontation you've had over probably the course of your life, you could probably go back and be like, man, you know, the majority of those, once we settled down, we were able to kind of work through that. No problem. Yeah, but it's a matter of, man, once you're both emotionally reactive, you've lost.
You shared how, like, sometimes when we see difficult people, it's probably just something that we've been wrong, and we feel like we're projecting that onto the other person. How do you deal with that? When you're, like, not wanting to project your hurt onto someone else, but maybe they have similar characteristics.
Right. Well, I think the first step is kind of what we talked. So the question was, if I understood it right, when you're dealing with, when somebody is difficult to deal with, and you have that emotional response, how do you deal with it? It's kind of what, it's kind of what we talked about. Is really is a matter of how do I make sure that I'm focused on Jesus and in my mission as a disciple first and foremost, above all else in every situation. And the second one is going back to what is it that I need to learn to proceed through this situation. Now, I will say this. We throw the word baggage around a ton, and I don't mean to misuse that. It's there. Here's the thing. Some of us really have a lot of stuff we're carrying around, you know? And we've been carrying it around a long time. And actually, we can call it baggage, we can call it life experience, we can call it past hurts, we can call it trauma, we can call it a lot of anything. I mean, we are influenced by the situations we've been through in our life, and we're going to carry that into future situations. I mean, that's just it. part of the beauty of Christianity is kind of what you were talking about, is Jesus didn't hold that against us and treated us in a way that our sins don't deserve. And it's up to us to treat other people like that as well. And that's a difficult and beautiful thing all at once. So, I don't know if I answered. I mean, kind of restating essentially what the class is, but.
I guess more so just like, how do you heal from the
How do you heal from the baggage?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a whole nother class. Yeah, therapy. That's it. I mean, so here's the funny thing is, yes, there's a place for therapy, and I think for a long time Christianity has ignored it, but therapy also isn't the end-all be-all, and I'll say that as a therapist. Is the fact that there's a lot of healing that can occur under the power of the Spirit and under our own effort. A lot of times, I'll say this, it is rare that I work with a client that by the end of therapy, they already knew the answer of what they needed to do. It's just a matter of them talking themselves into it. So a part of, I mean, that's a kind of a loaded question. I don't even know if you'll be able to answer it without a whole nother class, but Ron, you had your hand up?
I was going to ask the question, like, if you have a confrontation with somebody and then after it all cools down and you try to apologize and they don't even want to talk to you.
Okay, so the beauty of that is it's different. If it's a non-believer versus a believer, I do think Matthew 18 is a powerful section of verse for that. I think there's Hebrews 12 talks about not allowing a bitter root to grow up, and that to me would be a bitter root. If that was within the church, I think we follow the scriptures on how to deal with that, because that in a lot of ways is an unrepentant heart. But let's go back to the steps we talked about now. They don't want to forgive you, so fix our eyes on Jesus. This is a brother, a fellow child of God. This is somebody that God, we got to make sure that we're presenting them perfect. What is God trying to teach you? Gosh, maybe this brother's really hurt by my actions. Is we think through it in that way and then take the steps that the scriptures call us to have, really, of Matthew 18, is I'm going to try to address it, and if it doesn't get addressed, we're going to bring another person, and we're going to get to the bottom of this in a loving, caring, repentance-based mindset. Typically, when people are holding grudges and doing stuff like that, it's not to get all psychobabbly or anything, then there's a deep hurt in there that has not been, you know what I mean? There are some like more personality disorder people where it's just a power and control thing, but by and large, it's somebody who's really hurt and they have no idea how to deal with it. So, yeah.
I'm still stuck on the big landmine of how Christ had the joy in enduring the cross.
Dude, yeah.
And just skipping over that, but then it reminds me of James' first chapter when it talks about considering trials and things that difficult people
Yeah.
and difficult situations, how it proves our faith and gives us this perseverance and ability to deal with more.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is, James, where it's light and momentary troubles. Yeah. And if you think about that, man, if you classify, because some of us have been through some things, and if you haven't, you're going to go through some things. And the Bible just kind of blows it off. It puts it in perspective. Hey, light and momentary troubles. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is going to be bad. Oh, I know. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah, you get to see it, and man, I can't imagine being phone support. You probably get to hear the worst in people too, because man, people have no filter when it comes to that. Yeah, but I do think it's funny. One of the things she said was, oh, you're Linda? Yeah, I've dealt with a Linda before. We laugh, but we've all done that. Oh, I've dealt with your kind before. Yeah, and it's some innocuous. Yeah. Anything else? We're going to go ahead and wrap up. We could do this all night long. Last thing.
When you're managing people, how do you? Because that's kind of what my situation is. Because for me, I'm having a hard time like trying to manage people. Because for me, I'm like, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. We're doing it, but the problem is,
Everybody in here who has ever had children is like laughing at you right now. Like, how do you, essentially Troy wants to know how you control other people. So if anybody has a great answer for this, we're going to end on that. The answer is, yeah. I can't help you on that, man. Yeah, well, how can I get people to do what I tell them to do? When you find out, let me know. Thanks for your attention. So, hey, coming up, we've got our announcements. Chris is going to be, Mitch? I think Mitch is up this Sunday, right? So come ready Sunday. Change your mindset over this week. Find that difficult person. Find that difficult situation. Go out and deal with it. Change your mindset. Fix your eyes on Jesus. Leave the emotions at home. Thank you for your attention.